The legalization of sex work will create a safe and healthy environment for everyone. By legalizing sex work, protocols, testing, and licensing will create an environment to ensure protections and safety to workers and customers. Harvard Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Law Review stated that in the Netherlands, legalizing sex work means brothels are required to obtain and renew safety and hygiene license in order to operate. And street prostitution is legal and heavily regulated in places like the red light district. Legalizing sex work will result in decreased crime, lessen the spread of sexual diseases, and reduce sex trafficking. Right now, illegal sex work is allowing for sex trafficking and sexual diseases to occur. Environments for sex work will become healthier and safer for workers and everyone involved with legalization. Currently, sex workers are being criminalized for working, especially individuals who have been sex trafficked. In addition to this, sex workers are facing unsafe conditions leading to sexual diseases being spread and individuals causing harm to them, which sex workers have no protections or way to report them. If sex work continues to be illegal, we will see increases in sex trafficking, crimes, and diseases being spread, harming citizens throughout the United States. The United States federal government should pass a policy to legalize and protect sex workers. The plan for the United States to legalize sex work should start with ensuring licenses and health protocols are being put in place for businesses who offer sex work and require health care with regular STD testing to sex workers. This also means protections by government organizations like the police are in place to ensure sex workers can come forward about crimes and violence that occur to them. In addition, government organizations should redirect focus on pimps and sex traffickers to continue the decrease of sex trafficking in the United States rather than focusing on sex workers. By putting this plan in place, the United States will provide a safe and healthy environment for sex workers by reducing violence. This plan will enact requirements, regulations to oversee and enforce protections for sex workers, also helping to reduce police violence against sex workers with the ability to protect themselves no matter the job they hold. In New Zealand, a study conducted by Prostitution Law Review Committee revealed that 57% of sex workers noticed a positive change in police behavior since the legalization of sex work. Legalization allows sex workers to not be abused by police because they have the ability to work in their positions and not being blackmailed to protect themselves from being arrested. With the plan in place, sex workers will have the ability to legally work and protect themselves from abuse by police and clients. Legalization ensures protections from violence by providing sex workers rights and healthy and safe environments to work in. One advantage to legalization is the reduction in sexually transmitted diseases. With the legalization of sex work, the plan will provide health insurance, regular STD testing, and barrier protections for intercourse. A study conducted by Georgetown University Law Center found that when sex workers partnered with police in India, condom use rose to 85% and HIV prevalence fell from over 11% to less than 4% in just a 3-year span. With decriminalization, by providing protections to sex workers and having connection with police, there is reductions in STDs being spread and decreasing violence. This plan will enact protections to sex workers to help reduce the spread of STDs, and with healthcare, sex workers will have the ability to seek treatment at beginning signs. Legalization provides the ability to decrease STDs through protection, healthcare, and testing regularly. A second advantage to sex work becoming legalized is that it reduces violence against sex workers and decreasing crime. Creating environments with regulations and licensing provides a safer environment with protocols in place to protect sex workers and cut its connection to crime. The American Economic Journal found that in the Netherlands, creating an area designated for sex work provided 30 to 40% reductions in the first 2 years after opening the tipple zone. For tipple zones with a licensing system, we additionally find long-term decreases in sexual assault and a 25% decrease in drug-related crime. Legalization provides better environments to sex workers that reduce their chance of violence greatly and reduces crimes that are harmful to sex workers and their work. This will greatly impact the protections and safety of sex workers to reduce crimes around and committed to them. In addition to them being able to report violence against them to police, with it being legal, legalizing sex work provides a safer environment with reductions in crime and violence towards sex workers. Okay.
Now, when you say legalizing sex work, are you just talking about in specific places such as brothels or in different districts or just everywhere or what?
I would say that legalizing it in certain sections, for example, in the Netherlands, the red light district is a great example of that. Legalizing it in certain areas or streets that allows for licensing to be distributed for people working streets or for people who are working in brothels or just sex shops in a sense, but allowing it in certain locations so that we can keep maintenance and containment to that area.
How about with STD testing? How often will they get tested, and how long do those tests take to get back?
For the plan, I would say testing every 2 weeks, and it'll take a couple of days to receive the results.
Okay. So what if someone got an STD the first day after they got tested? Who's to say that they don't spread the STD for the next 13 days before they get tested again and find out they have it?
So obviously that is a chance that it can be taken, but with protections in place, like the study shown in India, having the connections with the police and having protect or barrier protections in place with condom use and stuff like that, it can increase the spread, as well as with the testing. We can also prevent it going on for a longer time, because with HIV, signs don't show up until later, and that will prevent, after those 2 weeks, that being spread across even more people, and preventing even more spreading.
Okay. And then with saying that it would decrease violence and crime against sex workers, um, how would you enforce that if people were out in the street, such as in a district? Would you have security guards roaming around there, or how would you do that?
I'll just wrap this up really quickly. We would definitely have security monitoring and ensuring the safety of all people that are working in those zones.
Okay. My negative. Okay. One disadvantage would be the probable increase in human trafficking due to the legalization of sex work. Human trafficking would be sure to increase because there will be seemingly endless need for sex workers. Each year, more than 800,000 women and children are lured and tricked and forced into prostitution to meet an insatiable demand, joining an estimated 10 million women already ensnared in $20 billion worldwide sex trade. That was from a book called Hansen and House Papers. The plan to legalize the sale of sex will create a much bigger need for sex workers, forcing more people into sex work who don't want to be involved with it. As unfortunate as it is, many sex workers have been forced into the trade against their will, so legalizing it could cause even more people to be dragged into sex work. The plan to legalize sex work would be detrimental to society by creating a demand for more sex workers, which could very well drag more unwilling people into the trade. Legalized sex work in other countries has not proven that violence against sex workers will go down. In places where prostitution is legal, sex workers have continued to be abused while doing their job. A quote from the demand abolition writers says that prostituted persons are mostly women and face exponential risks of murder and violence at the hands of male sex buyers, signifying that the practice is on the continuum of gender-based violence. This remains true even in areas where prostitution is legal or decriminalized. The plan to legalize sex work suggests that it would decrease violence against sex work, but research from other countries says otherwise. So if the plan won't cure violence in sex work, it seems that all it will do is create more of a demand for sex workers and more violence against them. Sex work has been legalized and also gives people the impression that they have the right to another's body for sexual gratification whenever they want. Looking at the statistic given earlier from the book, The Johns, Sex for Sale and the Men Who Buy It by Victor Marlick, it says that most sex workers are women and most sex buyers are men. Normalizing the act of buying sex also debases men by assuming that they are entitled to the access of women's body for sexual gratification. If paying for sex is normalized, then every young boy will learn that women and girls are commodities to be bought and sold. That's a quote published by the Washington Post from the 39th president, Jimmy Carter. This plan to legalize sex work could be very detrimental to society and the youth of America. It would give young boys and men the idea that consent is something that can be bought, which could not be further from the truth. The effect of legalizing allows women's bodies to be objectified and seen as a tool to fulfill a man's desire. One way that may be able to keep cracking down on sex work, but also giving sex workers the ability to be protected by the police and not be feared, is the Nordic model. The Nordic model is a model taken up by places like Sweden, making it illegal to buy sex, but not illegal to sell it. I believe that it is better to help women and girls avoid a life of prostitution than to deter men from buying sex acts. From President Carter. This quote explains that legalizing the selling of sex, but not the purchasing of it, would put the stress on the people buying it. The people selling it are doing nothing wrong. With this, it would make sex workers be able to call the cops and report crime without fear of getting exploited by them or getting in trouble. This doesn't give men the ability to feel that women's bodies are allowed to be bought and sold as much as it would if sex work was completely legal. It also keeps sex workers who are doing it out of necessity away from being punished, such as fines or going to jail. The Nordic model puts the emphasis on how you should avoid buying sex and takes away the negative stigma from selling it. The claim that legalization of sex work creating a safer and healthy environment to everyone is not exactly true. As proven from the demandevolution.org, legalizing sex in other countries has not led to the decrease in violence as commonly expected. It also would be hard to keep the environment clean and free of disease due to the fact that with an increase in business comes an increase in possible sexually transmitted disease. Arguing that STD prevention disease is like arguing that STD testing prevents disease is like arguing that pregnancy test prevents pregnancy. This is a quote from Leon Nicolwalk. This quote explains that when you get an STD test, it is after having sexual relations, not before. So it still puts people at risk of getting a sexually transmitted disease. Sex work being legalized is only sure to do one thing, and that is raise the demand for sex workers. When women who are already being trafficked and forced to do so against their will. What makes you think that if it is legal, there would be more willing people to do the job? The proposed law that legalizing sex work would be beneficial to sex workers is untrue because it would cause more people to purchase sex and violence wouldn't go down, potentially actually making sex work more dangerous. All in all, the proposition to legalize sex work would not provide a safer environment for sex workers, only a supply and demand problem in the industry, thus calling for forcing more people into sex work. This would possibly be the worst outcome because the government should not promote a law that gives sex trafficking more illegal business.
So in terms of your reductions in sexually transmitted diseases, would you not say that there would be reductions in legalizing sex work and providing testing rather than illegal sex work where condoms aren't being provided and testing isn't happening?
I feel that there's no perfect scenario. So I feel like that the government can't condone something that could still possibly give someone a sexually transmitted disease because there's no way of completely knowing unless you get tested every single day. There's no way of completely preventing the possibility of a sexually transmitted disease.
In reference to that, not condoning it, obviously it's still going to occur and people know their risks going in, and that also goes into regulations and stuff like that. So would you not say that not condoning it's not going to stop people from participating in it and taking that risk?
I believe that it would still that some people would still participate in it, but I believe that the fact that it being illegal would deter a lot of people from doing it. Whereas if it were illegal, a lot of other people might join in on that and might be putting more people at risk for a sexually transmitted disease.
Okay. And then you discussed people or women specifically selling their bodies in a sense, or being used in the men's view, used as an object. But what is the difference between sex workers and strippers selling their bodies? Because both are using their bodies as a way to earn money, and one is legal and one is not.
That's a good question. I understand that with them both being, or with one being illegal and one being illegal, there might be a little bit of confusion. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is 3 minutes, and it is my rebuttal. Okay. So my rebuttal to that would be that you focused on violence and murder not being decreased, which technically wouldn't be true, because as the American Economic Journal stated, that 30 to 40% of reductions in sexual abuse and rape were present in 2 years after legalizing in a specific zone. And this was an example in the Netherlands, as well as it also found long-term decreases in sexual assault and also decreased a 25% in drug-related crime. So in these environments, obviously violence and murder is actually being prevented by legalizing certain areas, as well as it's decreasing crimes of other senses that are most likely coincide or are often correlated with sexual diseases. And then you also discussed human traffic increasing, but the thing is that women or college students, for example, seek out sex work to pay their way through college. So obviously these women are, with the legalizations, they're not having the illegal repercussions with legalization. They are able to provide a living. And as my question I just asked, strippers are legally able to work, and sex workers are not, but they are both providing a way to sell their bodies, which one should not be demonized while the other one is accepted. And many women and men find confidence in working in these positions and having control over their own bodies. So, and finding a way to provide for themselves. So I would say that reductions in violence and murder are happening, as well as reductions in STDs with prevention for condom use, and STD testing is all, in a sense, reducing the chances of violence, harm, and risk of diseases to all involved.
In response to that, I feel the study that I looked at was from in Austria, and it said that there was, I think, 14 murders and 96 assaults in Austria during a 9-month period while it was still illegal. And then when it became legalized for the next year, there was about the same amount. Granted, it is a couple months longer, but that dramatic of a decrease, at least in this one case in Austria, does not seem to bode that effect for me. So I think that there's a possibility that sex work and could still come with the same violence that it has come with, and the same assault that it has come with when it was illegal. Another way I feel like the government can't put their name behind the fact that legalizing sex work, there's no real ability to stop people from possibly getting STDs. And they don't, though you can say that sex work and STD testing may slow down or prevent a majority or decrease the amount of sexually transmitted diseases, there's no way that you can make it perfect and make sure that there's no sexually transmitted diseases. So with there still being an increased risk, I don't think that it would be appropriate or an appropriate reason to legalize sex work. I also don't believe that there's anything stopping sex workers right now from getting regularly tested for sexually transmitted diseases. Even though it is illegal, they don't have to explain why they're getting a test. They could just go and get a test if they feel like. Granted, that's not a regulated thing where everyone would do that. So there's a possibility that not everyone would do that. But I think that there's a ability for people to be safe while doing it as well. Another thing that I feel like I would like to reiterate is that I think the Nordic model would be a better substitute for this. I think that a way that it would be able to help is putting all the stress and all the illegal activities on the buyer of sex and not the seller of sex. So it would make it to where the people who are doing it to put themselves through college, and the college students, for example, who have decided to do this, they will not be punished for it. They will be able to do that and put themselves through college and not have to worry about being fined or going to jail or getting kicked out of college. Whereas right now, with it still being illegal, they could have all those things happen to them. And also, I don't think it would drive down business too much because that's already how sex work is. It's already a $20 billion business with it being illegal. So there is still plenty of room for a college student to do that when it is legal for them to sell sex, but not for the other person to buy sex. When it comes to the human trafficking aspect, I feel that it won't help very much. I think that already there's 800,000 women and children that are lured and tricked and forced into prostitution. Granted, that's only 800,000 out of 10 million total workers, so there could be an argument that more people are willingly doing it than not, but that's just from this one study and what they found. Another thing is there's about 4,000 children involved in sex work, and some of them are 10 and younger. That fact, to me, I feel that if the Nordic model were enacted, it would help keep any underage person out of sex work, as well as keep the women and older people, men or women, out of doing sex work against their will. So I feel that the Nordic model would provide the same ability to slow human trafficking, or attempt to at least, while also still making it illegal to buy sex, and hopefully not driving up the demand for more sex workers.
Okay. So in summary, I want to conclude with a little bit of in-depthness in the plan. So that would be instated, and that means ensuring that we are reducing sex trafficking and having that oversight, because we want to make sure there is not a focus on sex workers, and that once sex work is legalized, that there is still a heavy focus on sex trafficking and keeping the oversight and monitoring and surveillance on sex trafficking, so we can ensure that there is a decrease in it. As well as, I do want to state that with STD testing, we are preventing the spread of prolonged STDs and spreading of them, and that with people, with sex workers right now, yes, they are able to go and get testing by themselves. They do not have to have a reason of why they're getting testing. The issue is that without a sort of healthcare, you are putting it on sex workers who to pay their way and ensure that they are protecting themselves. And many look at the price of going and getting tested if they do not have healthcare, which is a very real thing here in the United States, of people not having healthcare and protections and insurance to go and get those first signs checked out. So having the STD testing in place with legalization and safer areas, that is taken out of their hands to ensure that they are going and getting that done, or they cannot work, because otherwise you're leaving it up to them to make that decision. and people will see the price and they will not do it. They will just keep on working, and those signs will go unnoticed, or they will be noticed, and they will continue to spread sexual diseases, and STDs will continue to rise with illegal sex work, where they will be reduced with protection and testing and having healthcare in position with legalizing sex work in certain areas, as well as that there is no increased risk of harm to individuals. As I stated before, that people will be protected with having that oversight of police, and once again, the reduction in crimes, as stated in India, where, or in the Netherlands, where crimes were reduced 30 to 40%. Okay, that is it. I really don't know how to operate the recording thing in here.